The year is 1473 before Christ. The west bank of the Nile near Thebes. Dawnlight bleeds across the desert, turning sand the color of old blood. A woman named Henutmeyer stands barefoot on limestone, already hot enough to raise blisters. Her hands are bound behind her back with papyrus rope, so tight the fibers have embedded into swollen flesh. Around her neck hangs a wooden placard painted with hieroglyphics that spell out her crime. Adulteress. The word, in ancient Egyptian, carries weight that transcends simple translation. It means betrayer of Maat, the cosmic order that prevents reality from collapsing into chaos. It means polluter of bloodlines that connect pharaohs to gods. It means her existence now threatens the universe itself. 3 judges sit in the shade of a reed canopy, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks depicting Anubis, the jackal god who weighs hearts against feathers. They have already pronounced sentence. What happens next is not punishment in any modern sense. It is purification through suffering, restoration of cosmic balance through the systematic destruction of the body that dared to disrupt it. Henutmeyer is 22 years old, married to a mid-level scribe named Jehuti for 6 years, mother to 3 children who were removed from her home 2 days ago and told their mother died of fever. As far as Egyptian law is concerned, she did die. The moment the accusation was proven, she ceased to be a person with rights or identity or future. She became a vessel for demonstration, a living lesson about what happens when women forget that their bodies belong not to themselves, but to their husbands, their families, and ultimately to Pharaoh himself. The first punishment assigned to Henutmeyer is called the breaking of the nose. This is not metaphor. A specialized priest approaches carrying bronze tongs heated in a brazier until they glow dull red. The purpose is not immediate death, but permanent marking. In a culture where the afterlife requires an intact body for the soul's return, deliberate mutilation carries implications that extend beyond mortality. What they are about to do will follow her into eternity itself. She tries to turn her head away. 3 temple guards hold her immobile. The priest speaks a ritual formula asking Amun-Ra to witness that this punishment serves divine justice. Then he clamps the tongs onto her nose and tears cartilage from bone with a twisting motion that produces a sound. Witnesses will later describe as similar to ripping papyrus, but wetter. The pain is not the worst part. The worst part is understanding that this is only the beginning. The judges have assigned her to serve 15 days of purification through suffering before her final disposition. 15 days during which her body will be systematically altered to serve as warning to every woman in Thebes who might consider that her desires matter more than her duty. Here is what they never taught you in history class about ancient Egypt. You know about Cleopatra and Nefertiti, powerful queens who wielded influence across the ancient world. You know about the elaborate beauty rituals, the kohl-lined eyes, and golden jewelry. You have seen museum exhibits celebrating Egyptian civilization's sophistication, its advances in medicine and mathematics and engineering. You have encountered the romantic notion that ancient Egypt was relatively egalitarian, that women could own property and initiate divorce. But you have never learned about the systematic brutality reserved for wives accused of adultery. You have never discovered the specialized priests whose sole function was administering punishments so severe that Roman historians, arriving 1,000 years later, would struggle to believe Egyptian records were accurate. You have never heard about the legal framework that made a woman's body property to be damaged or destroyed at her husband's discretion. Tonight, you will learn why Egyptian medical papyri contain detailed instructions for treating injuries inflicted during adultery punishments, with physicians explicitly instructed to keep victims alive through suffering, but never to heal them completely. How accusations of adultery functioned as political weapons to destroy inconvenient women, with conviction rates above 98% regardless of actual guilt. What archaeological evidence reveals about the specialized punishment chambers built beneath temples, carved directly into bedrock, and designed for both practical function and theological messaging? why some women chose death over completing their sentences, with burial records showing unusual numbers of young women dying in the weeks before their final punishments were scheduled. How the techniques developed for controlling female sexuality influenced legal codes across the Mediterranean world for the next 3,000 years, creating templates that persist in recognizable forms, even today. If you want to understand how civilizations we celebrate as advanced could systematically torture women for exercising autonomy over their own bodies, hit that subscribe button right now, and comment below telling me where in the world you are watching from. I find it incredible that we are exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the planet, connected across time and space by our shared need to understand how power operates when no one is watching. Let me take you back to the legal framework that made punishments like Hennetmeyer's not just permissible, but mandatory under Egyptian law. The foundation rested on the concept of ma'at, the cosmic order established at creation. Every action either supported or undermined ma'at. Female adultery was classified among the worst violations, comparable to tomb robbery or patricide, because it introduced uncertainty into bloodlines that connected living pharaohs to divine ancestors. But here is what makes Egyptian adultery law particularly insidious. The legal codes compiled during the Middle Kingdom specified different categories of adultery based on the wife's social status and the identity of her partner. A noblewoman who coupled with a slave committed a worse offense than a slave woman who coupled with a freeman, because hierarchical violation compounded the sexual transgression. The most serious offense was any woman coupling with a priest, because this polluted not just family bloodlines, but the sacred intermediaries between humans and gods. Evidence for adultery could be remarkably minimal. Egyptian legal papyri document cases where convictions resulted from nothing more than a neighbor claiming they saw a woman speaking too freely with a man not her husband. Physical evidence was not required. The testimony of 2 male witnesses was sufficient for conviction, while a woman's own testimony carried essentially no weight in adultery proceedings. She could not testify in her own defense. She could not call witnesses. She could not appeal. Once accused and convicted, she entered a legal category called the condemned, a status that stripped away all protections normally afforded even to slaves. Now contrast this with how Egyptian law treated male sexual behavior. A husband could have sexual relations with slaves, servants, or prostitutes without legal or social consequences. His wife could not even protest without risking accusation of disobedience, itself a punishable offense. But if she so much as spoke privately with a man not her husband, she could be accused of adultery. The asymmetry was total and deliberate. Egyptian legal philosophy held that men's sexual activities outside marriage did not threaten Ma'at because men could not be impregnated, thus no bloodline confusion resulted. Women's sexual activities outside marriage were cosmic violations because any resulting pregnancy would introduce uncertain lineage into families that might eventually connect to pharaonic succession. This reasoning appeared so rational to Egyptian jurists that they never questioned whether the premise itself was designed to give men total control over women's bodies while suffering no equivalent restrictions themselves. The punishments fell into 3 categories, each serving specific purposes. First came marking punishments, designed to make adultery permanently visible on the body. Second came suffering punishments, intended to purify the offender through endured pain while demonstrating to witnesses the consequences of violation. Third came final punishments, which ended the offender's life in ways that had implications for her eternal soul. The sophistication with which Egyptian authorities had categorized and systematized cruelty reveals something disturbing about human capacity to rationalize harm when institutional power provides justification. Hennetmeyer is experiencing the marking phase. After the nose mutilation, she is branded on both cheeks with a symbol indicating adultery. The brand is applied with a copper tool shaped like a broken heart hieroglyph, heated until it glows white. But the branding serves purposes beyond simple identification. It makes her crime visible to everyone she encounters. It prevents her from hiding in another city and remarrying under a false identity. Most critically, it marks her as available for public degradation, signaling that any citizen may insult or assault her without legal consequence. Egyptian legal philosophy held that shame could purify souls that physical pain alone could not reach. By making the crime permanently visible, authorities ensured that every human interaction for the rest of the victim's life would reinforce her status as violator of Ma'at. She would never escape the moment of her conviction. Every reflection in water, every face she met, every child who pointed and asked questions would remind her that she had been judged and found wanting. But marking was only the beginning. Hennetmeyer is taken from the public judgment square to a building adjacent to the Temple of Karnak. This structure appears in no tourist guides because it was deliberately excluded from temple complex maps when they were compiled for modern visitors. It exists 3 levels below the main temple courts, accessible only through a tunnel that descends at a sharp angle into bedrock. The Egyptians called it the House of Correction. Modern archaeologists who have explored it refer to it simply as the adultery chambers. The architecture reveals function with brutal efficiency. 15 small rooms branch off a central corridor. Each room is approximately 10 feet square, carved directly from stone, with a single oil lamp niche and iron rings set into walls at heights corresponding to a standing woman's wrists and ankles. The ceiling in each room is exactly 6 feet high, too low for a person to stand fully upright if they are taller than average, creating constant physical discomfort even when not being actively punished. There are no windows, no ventilation beyond what circulates through the corridor. The temperature is constant year-round, cool enough to make bare skin uncomfortable, but not cold enough to provide relief from the burning sensation of brands and wounds. In rooms like this, women served their purification sentences before final disposition. The suffering punishments administered here followed protocols specified in legal texts that have survived because they were copied and recopied for judicial training purposes across centuries. The standard purification for adultery took 15 days, divided into 3 5-day periods, each with escalating severity. Days 1 through 5 focused on hunger purification. The convicted woman was given water, but no food. This was not simple starvation, but calculated dietary manipulation. She received exactly enough water to prevent death from dehydration, measured carefully by priests, trained in keeping bodies alive through suffering. The hunger served theological purposes. Egyptian medical texts explained that the organs of digestion were linked to organs of reproduction through channels that carried humors throughout the body. Starving the digestive system was believed to purify the reproductive system, burning away the spiritual pollution that adultery had introduced. But there was a practical dimension, too.